Welcome to Making Life Happen with your girl Trainer B, where life meets destiny, transforming dreams into reality. A place to discuss life and living it as it relates to our overall physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. Let's get into it.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Making Life Happen with Trainer V. I am so glad that you joined me today. I want to talk to you a little bit about what I call in the beginning. I actually wrote a book in 2016, and I actually not really forgot about it, but I hadn't really went back and looked at it. But I went back and I read a little bit about it this morning, or what was written in it, and it actually reminded me of how this journey of making life happen began and how it all got started. So, if you are one who journals, I encourage you to go back, look at some of the things that you've written over time. It may very well surprise you and remind you of some lost dreams and some hopes you once had. And I also want to encourage you that once you've identified those dreams, remind yourself it is not too late to fulfill some of those dreams. But the challenge is, it's getting started, right? So, 3 things I want to talk about today, and that's purpose, passion, and fulfillment. So I'm going to read you a little excerpt from the book. Let's see. It's called In the Beginning. And if you have not gotten a copy of this book, it is called In the Garden of His Presence. You can find it on Amazon, and you can order a copy. And it is a very easy read, but it basically talks about my experience and how I learned how to develop my relationship with God. It's, you know how you look into a window when you go window shopping and you just get a bird's eye view, or you'll peek at the things that you want to see or just admire. Well, this is just a peek into the beginning of my 27-year journey now of how I developed that relationship. And one of the things that I learned in that is I learned about purpose. I learned about passion. I learned about fulfillment. So let me read a little bit. It's called In the Beginning. It's one of the chapters. We were not born of this earth, which is why we are constantly searching for something beyond our human existence. There is an internal instinct in every one of us seeking to know our origin. This search for satisfaction and fulfillment is a part of being human. It is an innate longing we have. It is a call of the heart, causing us to search for what some would refer to as both purpose and fulfillment. It drives us to explore, to experiment, and to be fascinated, thereby trying to fill a void. However, it is often met with momentary and fleeting satisfaction. And until that void is filled with what that space was meant for, there will be a continuous search for purpose throughout this earthly existence. So that's one of the things I want to talk to you about today is purpose. So what is purpose? The reason for which something is done or created, for which something exists. You have to know that you were put here for a reason and that you have purpose. If you don't believe that, then go back, and I would encourage you to rethink that. Okay, because every one of us are put here for a purpose. We are passing through here. We existed before we got here, and we will continue to exist when we leave. This is just a journey and a stopover. Okay. So I'm not the only one that has asked myself, what is my purpose? I can hear it ringing now, just in the atmosphere. What is my purpose? I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to that have talked to me in the element of the coaching realm. I don't understand what my purpose is. I don't understand what I was put here to do. And I'm pretty sure that is something that you have questioned or at some point just had a thought about. Then I want to talk about passion. Every one of us, we have passion for something. We absolutely do. And that passion is what drives us. That passion is what causes our pursuit. That passion, it causes us, it also determines the level of pursuit that we're going to have. And fulfillment, in short, fulfillment is being satisfied, having no regret. Now, I have read articles and talked to different people or have been there at that time of transition. And I often wonder and have heard them say sometimes, the only regret that I have, or I have regrets. I'm not one to want to get to the end of my life and take my last breath and have a bunch of, oh, I wish I coulda, shoulda, and I would have. I don't believe you want that either. And that's one of the reasons why making life happen is so important. That's what it's all about. Having no regrets, doing the ding dang thing till you're satisfied, right? Life is all about living. So again, what does that look like? What does making happen look like to you? So I have been on this journey for quite some time, and I would love for you to get the book and just read about it, because I had such a distorted vision of life and living it. I had such a distorted vision of God and heaven. And when I heard about this abundant life, I'm like, okay, well, what does that mean? What does abundant life look like? Well, that's a journey for each and every one of us to pursue, and we all have our personal journeys. But one of the things that I can tell you is it's determined by the heart. The heart plays a major role in your life. What is in your heart? And what is the condition of your heart? Think about it. I'm not talking about anybody else's heart. I'm talking about your heart. I'm talking about my heart. And that's one of the things that I had to learn. The condition of our hearts is what determines our lives. It really does. It has a major impact on how we live. It has a major impact on the results of how we live. Our current condition is a result of our thoughts. Our thoughts govern our actions. We know that. And our actions determine our decisions, right? Our life and our current situations are a culmination of every decision that we've ever made in our life. If we don't like the results that we're having, then we need to make some better decisions. Okay? That's all a part of making life happen, is getting it heart right. There are areas in every one of our hearts that we need to work on. We really do. But the issue is, a lot of times we don't want to admit that there's an issue, and we don't want to do the work of self-correcting, because it does require some self-reflection and it requires some change. And a lot of times change is not easy. And be honest with you, you've heard it said, oh, the older I get, oh, I'm just that way. No, you're not that way. Oh, this is just the way I am. No, it's not the way you are. It's the way that your heart has caused you to be. And I think that many of you can relate to that. So I want to talk about the garden, because our heart really is like a garden. What is not seed is weed. Let me give you this example. I'm not one to garden. I don't pride myself on having a green thumb. But that was an analogy and a revelation that I received one day when I was at my home. And I had this long driveway, and I wanted to plant some flowers and some hostas. I want to do curve appeal. So in my journey to make my yard more beautiful, I had to dig up and prepare the soil to receive these plants and these different things. So as I began to dig up and prepare that area, and this driveway was long, what I discovered was underneath the current dirt, there used to be a gravel driveway there before I put the cement driveway there. So that means there was a level of gravel that I had to dig up. That was a lot of work. You all, I worked more muscles than I knew I had. Okay. I was one sore sister. I was sore for days. Then after I got the gravel up, there was another layer where a brick driveway had been there. So that meant I had to get up all the bricks before I planted the plants. Again, there was another layer of digging, and I call it excavation, and just weeding and getting up stuff. Once I finally got to the root of all of this that would cause my plants to die, it went deep. So that means I had to put on more topsoil and get the ground just right. I was ready to plant my hostas, is what I was planting. Hostas and monkey grass. It was so pretty. I planted this grass down both sides of the driveway, and it took root and it began to grow. Guess what else grew? Weeds. Weeds grew up between my hostas. I told you all I'm not a good gardener. I'm not a green thumb. But had I put some kind of overlay down, that probably would have prevented. But nothing is ever going to totally prevent any weeds from coming up in your garden. Then I had the thought, as it relates to the heart, this is how life has caused our heart to be. There are layers of things that need to come up, that need to come out, and they need to be dealt with in order for the good things to sprout, in order for the good seeds that we plant, in order for them to sprout. One thing I learned about weeds is that they will overtake your garden. Have you recognized and understood and seen that weeds will outgrow your plant and overtake your plant? Now, imagine a garden that has not been cared for. Farmer goes out, plant this garden, or I go out and I plant my garden. I just plant it. I don't do any weeding. So can you imagine after about a few months, a few years, what that garden looks like? You can't see the plants anymore. All you see is a bunch of weeds. That's why it's so important that we go out, we de-weed, we pluck up constantly every weed that's in the garden, because it's going to kill the plant. It's going to kill the seed. It's going to kill everything that's good that has been planted. Can you identify and see that that's a condition of a lot of our hearts? Well, it is. That taught me such a valuable lesson. And I started asking God to help me work on my heart, because there were some things in there that I needed to get to the root of. And that's a whole nother thing. If you don't get to the root of the issue, the weed is only going to grow back. So that's why you have to pluck up that weed and make sure it's gone in order for your fruit to grow. Now, when I planted hosta, I didn't get irises. I didn't get apple trees or pear trees. I got hosta. So whatever seed that you plant, that's the seed that's going to grow. That's what you're going to reap. So whatever you want to grow, those are the things that you plant, regardless of what life gives you. You plant good seed, because there's a scripture that says you're definitely going to reap what you sow. You've heard it said karma. Well, no, I call it the law of reciprocity. What you put out there, you're going to reap the harvest of that. Think about a harvest. A seed goes in the ground. It's one little seed, but the harvest comes back in abundance, right? So you plant one apple seed, it's coming back as a tree. So keep that in mind when you are thinking about your thoughts and the things that you say, and things that we do, because those are seeds. And what is not a seed is actually a weed. So here are 3 seeds I want to talk about, just 3, and it's quite a bit of them. If we go back and look at our life, it's quite a bit of them. I want to talk about the seed of joy. What brings you pleasure? That's joy. We all want that. I don't know of anybody who does not want to experience joy. I don't know anyone who does not want joy. And the Bible tells me, and it teaches me that we can have joy unspeakable, right? We can have joy that surpasses our understanding, right? Another seed is happiness. Happiness is satisfaction. Being satisfied with your life, being satisfied with the things that you've done, being satisfied with the decisions that you've made, being satisfied with the choices that's afforded to you, being satisfied with the opportunities and the things that are opening up to you. Oh my God, this is a big one. Peace. The seed of peace. We're in a time right now where there are so many people talking about the peace of mind, self-care, all that's a part of self-care, all of that, the joy of peace. Now, this is not the totality, because there are plenty of seeds that you can plant in your life. But for the sake of time, I just want to talk about a few. These are three that are most important to me: the seed of joy, the seed of happiness, and the seed of peace right now. Now, what can kill that are those weeds of doubt. We all have doubts. Every single one of us. We all have doubts, and with reason. But we can't allow those doubts to keep us stuck and not able to move. Another one is fear and unbelief. Well, what if I fail? Okay. What if you do? Try again. I used to tell my son, and I'll tell anybody, and I still tell people who are afraid, you cannot learn from the mistakes if you don't make them. So what if you fail? What if you make a mistake? Did you learn from it? Well, it was not a failure, because if you learned something, then it was good. Take what you learned from it and do it again. Take what you learned from it and govern yourself accordingly, right? Here's another one. Opinion of folk. Opinion of people will get you halted. It will keep you in bondage. It will cause you to fear. I think about the internet and all the things that are out there now, and people are so angry and they're so disgruntled. Here's a transparent moment. When I was encouraged or prompted to do these podcasts, I didn't want to be out here. I did not, because people can be cruel. People can be mean. But one thing I determined in myself, that this was a calling. This was something that I was inspired to do by God. And I've been wanting to do it. I want to share with you all the lessons that I've learned, because I believe that they will help. I want to encourage you. I want to empower you. And sometimes the only way to do that is through technology. It's one of the best avenues to get the word out there. And I didn't want to do it. I absolutely didn't want to do it, because I just didn't want to deal with all the naysayers. I'm being honest. Because again, people can jump on, they can be very cruel. But one thing technology also allows me to have is a block and delete button. So just like I told you in the last video, I would be absolutely nuts if I thought that we were going to agree on everything, but we're not. But one thing I'm not going to tolerate is a bunch of foolishness. And that's just it. So I love the way that technology has given me the opportunity to do what I do, because it gets me to see you. It gets me to encourage. It gets me to meet and greet. I can't wait for your feedback. I would love your feedback. Tell me some of the things that you want to hear and talk about and share. And I will be glad to do that. Again, if you want to reach out to me, you can reach me through my website, info@trainerv.com. That's info@trainerv.com. Email me with your questions, your comments, or anything that you want to share. Okay. Now, remember I said if it's not seed, it's a weed. So now we have to go through the process of weeding our garden, plucking up those weeds that were not meant to be in our hearts. Our heart is not meant to be hard. It's not meant to be wounded. And a lot of us are walking around here with a wounded heart. I can tell you that I was one of those individuals. Hardcore. I'm going to have a couple of friends on here to tell you some of this silly stuff that I used to do and say, because at one point I didn't think love existed until I met my husband. I did not. I had been so wounded that I gave up. And I had convinced myself that love just was not real. But we know that was rooted in hurt, that was rooted in fear, that was rooted in abandonment, and abundance of other things. However, that was one of my issues. So I had to learn to pluck it up. That was some work. I call it, I went through a period of excavation, just like those rocks that had to be dug up. Those were some hard places in my heart that had to be dug up. Just like those bricks that laid there, they were so meticulously laid. Look, I'm pretty sure that driveway was beautiful at the time when they laid it. But when I went back and had to dig it up and it became mine, it showed me just how much over the years that we can allow things, hurts, pains, disappointment. Oh my goodness, disappointment. How we can allow that to harden our hearts. And when we do that, out of our heart flows the issues of life. We make decisions based on that. We make foolish turns in our life based on the conditions of our heart. One thing I say when people introduce themselves to me and they tell me all about themselves, I'm like, okay, I hear what you're saying, but I'll see. You can give me all your accolades and you can tell me about you, the greatest person in the world, and you're this and you're that. My response or my thought is, okay, I believe you, but I'll see. Because what's going to happen is the true us is going to manifest. The true you is going to manifest. So in your conversation, that tells a lot about who you are. It tells a lot about who we are. We talk about what's in our heart. What's in our heart comes out. It's going to come out eventually. The hurt is going to come out. The pain is going to come out. Love is, whatever's in there, love is going to come out. Joy is going to come out. Whatever is in your heart. I go to work on Mondays, and most people is like, oh God, it's Monday morning. Well, no, I'm trying to change that. It's Monday, yay. It's another day, because I don't have to be here. I get to be here, right? It's all about changing the condition of your mind, changing the condition of your heart. And that is going to determine your life. That's going to determine how you make life happen. Because if I'm constantly being disappointed, I'm never going to reach for anything, because I'm afraid of failure. I'm afraid of being disappointed again. So that means sometimes when we go to work on our hearts, unfortunately, we're going to recognize that we may need to separate ourselves from some things. We may need to separate ourselves from some situations, and we need to separate ourselves from people. You may not recognize this at first, but once you begin to change, you'll begin to hear differently. You'll begin to see differently. Birds of a feather typically flock together, but once you have separated yourself out, that flock or that thing or that situation, it begins to change and you begin to see things differently. I'll give you an example. I can look at a picture of a person that I absolutely love. It be a friend, foe, family member, whatever. When I get angry with them, my vision of them changes. You know why? Because my heart condition in that moment has changed. I'm looking at them through the eyes of anger. But once the anger has subsided and we have reconciled our differences, they look totally different to me. Because my heart condition has changed. Your heart is the filter by which information is processed. Your heart is the filter by which you receive information and by the way you give information. There can be times when you will say something that you don't mean for it to come out harsh, but because of the condition of your heart, it comes out. I used to speak in anger. I meant what I said, but the way I said it sometimes came out wrong. That was because of the filter that was in my heart. So I needed to deal with the anger. I needed to deal with whatever it is I was dealing with in order for me to relay that information properly, right? In order for it to be received properly. So that's why it's so important that we deal with the heart. Now, one of the things I realized is that that's a lifelong issue. Because again, think about a garden. You have to keep weeding the garden. You have to constantly weed the garden. You're never going to plant a garden and it's going to just stay beautiful. You're going to have to work that garden every single day. And I hope this is making sense and I hope this is helping someone. So we cannot make life happen if we're not going to work on our heart. One of the things about working on our heart is that we have to be willing to admit that there's problems. Every one of us have issues. There are places and things that we can improve upon and that we need to improve upon. And so one of the things that I love to do is I love to sit and journal and just have reflective moments. If the people in your life are telling you that there's an issue, and there's more than one person telling you that there's an issue and they keep telling you the same thing, then I'm inclined to believe that everybody can't be wrong. Everybody's not the issue. That we need to take into consideration what is being shared with us, what is being shared, because it could help us get to the root of the problem and it could help us to see better. So this is my challenge to you this week. For the next 7 days, just 7 days, especially when you wake up in the morning, what's the first thought that you have? Write that down, journal it, just so it can remind you. Then I want you to take note of your conversations. Just 7 days, just take note of your conversation. Pay close attention to what you're saying, okay? Even take it a step further. Ask your closest friends, family members. If you have kids, they'll be brutally honest with you. Ask them. But don't just ask anybody. Don't ask anybody that's going to tell you what you want to hear. You need to ask someone that's going to be brutally honest with you when you ask them the question. And here are the questions. What do I talk about the most? Not so much what I talk about the most, but that's a good question. Then ask them, how do I sound when I talk about it? And then what is my demeanor when I talk about it? How am I acting while I'm discussing that situation? You might very well be surprised at what you learn. I mean, if you're one of those people that are constantly negative or just complaining about your situation, you've been there, you've seen those, constantly complaining about your situation but never willing to do anything. Okay, turn the mirror around and ask yourself, what's the problem? Because that's what's keeping you from being happy. That's what's keeping you from moving. It may be keeping you from what? Making your life happen. If you're constantly talking about being depressed, then you're depressed. You're constantly talking about, woe is me. I call it the Mr. Snuffleupagus syndrome. You know, Big Bird's imaginary friend, he was always depressed. Well, yeah, we will want to, let's uproot that. Let's uproot that and understand why we're that way. And I'm pretty sure it's out of some area of disappointment, fear, unbelief, doubt, and it needs to be uprooted. Some of this goes way back to childhood. Okay, so that's your challenge this week. It says sit with yourself, sit with someone else that's going to be brutally honest, and let's start getting to the root of these things that are keeping us from making our life happen. And that begins with the heart. Okay, so I want us to be able to stay connected. You can subscribe to Making Life Happen with Trainer V on any podcast platform. Anywhere you receive your podcast, you can subscribe. And I'm encouraging you to subscribe so you won't miss not one episode. You can also go to my YouTube channel, that's Trainer V, and you can subscribe there. And again, you will get the new episodes as they drop. And if you would like a copy of this book, you can always go to Amazon.com and order your copy. I promise you, it's an easy read. It's a good read. I was surprised by myself when I started reading again. I was like, oh, this is some good stuff. Okay. But that's all the time we have today. I appreciate you joining me once again. And this is Trainer V. I will see you next time.